In this video, I'm going to show you how to update this little antique 3-drawer dresser. It's in pretty rough shape, but it'll just take a couple of repairs and a coat of paint to update it and make it something that could function in just about any space. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this mirror off for the purposes of prep. Be sure when you're taking off mirrors, drawer pulls, knobs, that you keep all of the hardware that goes with each individual part with the part. Trust me, it'll make putting it together a lot easier. Also with pieces like this that are really old and looks like it has probably been outside at some point, you really want to take it apart to clean it. Your paint job is really only as good as your prep. So if you don't take this off and you just go ahead and paint over it, you risk all that gunk and grime that's trapped between the dresser and the mirror just bleeding through and ruining your paint job. So trust me, just go ahead and remove it. So once you've removed your hardware and your mirrors, you'll start sanding. Excuse my little blooper here. My sander came unplugged and I failed to turn it off before I plugged it back in. I am using 80 grit sandpaper. I am going to go ahead and hit the whole drawer front as well as the sides just to make sure that I get good clearance when I go to put it back in. This piece, like I said, is really textured, so I'm not expecting perfection, just kind of breaking down all the gunk and giving me a nice clean surface to go ahead and work with. So now we've got the piece cleaned, all the hardware is removed. I'm going to show you the kind of gunk and grime that came off here in a second. You just want to make sure that you get not only the residue off, but also get all of your cleaning product off too with a good final rinse before you paint. So here we have the salt wash applied to the dresser in a somewhat random pattern. It's kind of hard to be totally random, but I kind of tried to find the places that had little divots and bumps and beauty marks. That way it would kind of help even up the surface of the dresser. I decided to use salt wash on this piece because it just needed a little bit of help in that department. So the smallest container of salt wash is 2 ounces. And you're to mix that with 4 ounces of paint. And I had about 2 ounces of Farm Fresh left, so I mixed 2 ounces of Farm Fresh with 1 ounce of the salt wash mixture, and that was plenty to just kind of go over the roughest parts of the dresser and make it look somewhat even. There's the mirror over there kind of doing its thing. So what you do is you'll stipple this on in whatever pattern you want. You can do the whole thing if you'd like. And then let it dry about halfway and knock down the stiff peaks and then let it finish drying. And then we are going to come back in with the second paint color that will end up being our top coat. I wanted to give you a quick comparison on the paint sizes. This is a 1 pint bag of paint. I'm going to be working with the sample size today. 2 of these will be enough to get the dresser done. Probably have a little bit left over. We'll kind of see how far the coverage goes. It is a lighter color, but these samples are a great way to test the waters without committing to a full-size pack. So when you're mixing your milk paint, you want to use equal parts paint to water. I tend to prefer using warm water, and I'll reserve just a little bit. So when I do my initial whisking and mixing, if there's any clumps or chunks that are being stubborn and don't want to mix, I can toss that last little bit of water in there to thin it out. You can use a fork, you can use like a mixing stick. The whisk just seems to be the best that I've found. And when you're done with this mixing part, you're going to end up with a consistency that's roughly like a melted milkshake. And if you need to let your paint set for a few minutes after you've mixed it to kind of let the bubbles settle, it'll thicken up a little bit, and then you'll kind of see this texture that you see here where it's just a slow drip, a little thick. It's not going to totally run right off your piece. DIY wax for this piece because I really like the ease of application I get with this particular brand. I chose the white because I think it's going to look great against the textured finish with our salt wash. I am using a 2-inch round waxing brush and just dipping it into my jar and using some pressure, not a ton, but you want to make sure that you're pressing it into the paint without necessarily overdoing it. And you also want to be aware of how much you're using. You want to make sure that you're getting enough on to fully saturate your paint, but you don't want to apply so much that it's gummed up on the piece. Once you've applied your wax, you can go back with the lint-free rag and finish buffing it in. The more you buff, the shinier the finish is going to be, so just keep that in mind. If you want to stick with a pretty matte finish, you don't want to overwork it. This is just to even it out and remove any excess from your piece. Alright guys, here's the finished piece. I took the original hardware off, cleaned it really well, and updated it with the Rustoleum white satin spray paint. I just thought it would look good against the textured finish of the piece. Hopefully this has inspired you to try some DIY of your own. I'll go ahead and list everything that I use below so that you can either use exactly the same products or a variation of the products. Hopefully you'll also take the time to subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks for watching.